Wow. This 2024 election, huh? It's already shaping up to be a wild one. And, you sent over a ton of articles about AI and elections. A little nervous, to be honest, but also super curious to see what we find in this deep dive.
Yeah, no, I get it. There's a lot of talk about AI in elections. People are concerned about its impact on, campaigning and misinformation and even just like election integrity in general. Public confidence and election honesty it's become really divided, especially since 2011, like sharply along partisan lines.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag for sure. And one thing that keeps coming up in these articles, right, is AI and the spread of misinformation. I mean, we've always had fake news, propaganda, that kind of thing.
Right.
But AI, could it take things to like a whole new level?
Oh, absolutely. It's both fascinating and kind of terrifying. AI can produce misinformation at a scale and speed we've just never seen before. We're talking about, incredibly realistic deepfakes.
Oh, yeah, those are scary.
That could make it seem like a candidate is saying or doing things they never did.
I can see how that would be really effective, especially like right before an election, right? Imagine a deep fake video surfaces just a few days before people vote,
Yeah.
showing a candidate, I don't know, saying something totally outrageous or offensive.
Right. And even if it gets debunked quickly, the damage might already be done,
Yeah.
especially on social media.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Mm.
I mean, it feels like we're entering this like uncharted territory.
Yeah.
It's going to be harder and harder to tell what's real and what's fake. So what can we do? Like, how do we even fight back against this AI-driven misinformation?
Well, there's no like magic solution.
Sure.
But there are some strategies emerging. Tech companies, for example, are trying to watermark and label AI content.
Good.
But that's not foolproof, of course. Social media platforms are also trying to flag suspicious content and kind of steer people towards more authoritative sources. But they often struggle to keep up with the sheer volume of information.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. So ultimately, a lot of the responsibility falls on us. The users. We need to be way more critical of what we see online, especially during an election.
So it sounds like media literacy is more important than ever. We can't just blindly trust everything we see. We need to, like, fact check and think critically about the information we're consuming.
Exactly.
And I guess it's not just about individual responsibility either, right? I mean,
Yeah.
election officials and those institutions, they play a big role too in establishing trust and credibility.
Oh, for sure. Think about it. If they use official.gov addresses, verified social media accounts, have consistent messaging,
Right.
that can really help voters identify legitimate sources of information.
Yeah, yeah. It's like creating a clear signal
Right.
in this sea of noise.
Exactly.
But with all this talk about AI and, technology and all that, it's easy to forget that elections are still run by, real people.
Absolutely. The human element is crucial. Election officials are really the backbone of our democracy, and their expertise and integrity are more vital than ever, I think. Despite the concerns about turnover and burnout and all that, most election officials have years of experience.
Okay, that is somewhat reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to know there are experienced people at the helm, even with all this crazy technology stuff. But speaking of potential disruption, I'm curious about the Bipartisan Policy Center's tabletop exercises. What did they find? Like any particularly alarming threats to the election process from AI? And maybe even more importantly, did they come up with any solutions?
Well, their report, Preparing for Artificial Intelligence and Other Challenges to Election Administration,
No.
it highlights some pretty worrisome scenarios. One is the potential for AI to spread misinformation about voting procedures.
Oh,
Like, imagine AI-generated content spreading false information about, I don't know, polling locations or registration deadlines, even just how to fill out a ballot properly.
right.
That could cause mass confusion, suppress voter turnout, particularly in certain demographics.
Yeah, wow. I hadn't even thought about that. It's like a targeted attack on the mechanics of voting itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we counter that kind of sophisticated misinformation?
Well, the report recommends a flood the zone approach,
Okay.
using every channel available to spread accurate information. Government agencies, community organizations, the media, social media influencers, all of it,
Right.
to basically drown out the noise.
So it's about being proactive, coordinated. We can't just wait for this misinformation to spread and then react. We have to get ahead of it.
Exactly. Another scenario they talk about is the potential for AI-driven security threats against election officials and the processes themselves.
Okay.
We're not just talking online harassment or disinformation campaigns here. Imagine AI generating really believable threats of violence against election boards, or trying to disrupt ballot counting, or even more sophisticated attacks on the voting system.
That sounds terrifying, like
Yeah.
straight out of a movie.
Yeah, it's unsettling to think how AI could be used to attack the very foundations of our democracy.
So how do we protect against those kind of threats?
No, strong cybersecurity measures, obviously. But the report also stresses the importance of contingency plans,
Okay.
working with law enforcement to protect election officials, safeguarding those ballot handling procedures, developing protocols for responding to different disruptions. It's like a fire drill, but for election security.
Yeah, you hope you never have to use it,
Right.
but you got to be prepared.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential dangers of AI, and it is pretty scary stuff.
Hmm.
But is there another side to this? Could AI actually be used to enhance democratic processes? Like, could it be a force for good in this election?
That's a great question. And the answer is yes, absolutely. AI isn't all doom and gloom. It offers some really exciting opportunities to improve our democracy and make it more inclusive and participatory.
Okay, I like the
Yeah.
sound of that. Tell me more. What are those potential benefits?
Well, imagine AI-powered chatbots. That can help voters learn about candidates and where they stand on the issues,
Okay.
but in a personalized way. These chatbots could answer questions, provide summaries of complex policies, even help you find your polling place.
That's cool.
It could be really helpful for first-time voters or people who just feel overwhelmed by all the information out there,
Yeah.
you know?
It's like having your own little personal political assistant in your pocket.
Right. And for campaigns that are, under-resourced, AI could really change the game, help them target their messages, reach voters who they might not otherwise reach.
Right.
They could even automate tasks like scheduling and fundraising, which frees up their time and resources to actually connect with voters.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like AI could help level the playing field,
Exactly.
giving smaller campaigns a fighting chance. And, maybe amplify the voices of communities that are often like marginalized or ignored by those big traditional campaigns.
Absolutely. And then there's the potential of, large language models, or
Yes.
LLMs,
Yeah.
to really empower voters. These AI tools can analyze huge amounts of data, legislation, policy documents, even social media posts, to give voters insights and explanations that they might not otherwise have access to.
I've heard about these LLMs, but I don't know, it's still a little fuzzy to me how they could actually help voters, like in a practical way. Can you give me an example?
Sure. So let's say you're trying to understand a complicated ballot initiative about, I don't know, local property taxes.
Okay.
An LLM could analyze all the text of that initiative, explain the potential consequences, but in plain language, and even compare it to similar initiatives in other places. It would basically be like your personal policy analyst,
Wow.
helping you make a more informed decision.
That's incredible. Like a superpowered research assistant in your pocket.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. LLMs could help voters navigate all those local elections, which can be confusing, providing information about the candidates, ballot initiatives, polling locations, all tailored to your specific address and your interests. They could even help you find information about those local issues that don't always get covered by the big media outlets.
Oh, that's a great point. It's
Yeah.
like they could shine a light on all those local races that often get overshadowed by the national stuff,
Exactly.
which is really important because those local elections have a more direct impact on our daily lives.
Absolutely. And here's another interesting thing. LLMs could help voters actually write more effective messages to their elected officials.
Wow.
Help you get your point across in a clear and concise way, suggest talking points based on your interests or the representative's voting record. It's like having a personal speechwriter for civic engagement.
I love that. All this talk about AI and voter engagement, it makes me think about college students. They're a huge voting bloc, especially in those swing states. But figuring out the voting process can be confusing, especially for first-timers. Could AI help them get registered and make sure their vote counts?
That's a really important point. College campuses are, hubs of political energy.
For sure.
And student voting can definitely sway elections. And yeah, AI could play a role in making voting more accessible, less intimidating for young people.
So what would that look like? How could AI actually be used to simplify that whole voting process for college students?
Well, AI-powered chatbots could guide students through registration,
Okay.
answer questions about eligibility, deadlines, help them request absentee ballots.
That's a great idea. That would be huge, especially for students who are living away from home for the first time and might not be familiar with the voting laws in their new state.
Right, exactly.
Any other ways AI could be used to make voting easier for students?
Yeah. Well, colleges could use AI to create personalized voter guides for their students,
Okay.
providing information about the candidates, the issues, the logistics of voting in their specific precinct. And these guides could be accessible through a mobile app, maybe even a chatbot on the college website.
I like that. It would make it so much easier for students to get the info they need without having to, wade through a bunch of confusing websites or paperwork.
Right. And colleges could even use AI to analyze data about student voting patterns to identify any potential barriers to participation, and then use that information to develop targeted outreach programs, make the process more equitable for all students.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here in this first part of our deep dive. We've talked about the potential for AI to both mess things up and improve the 2024 election. And it's pretty clear this technology is going to be a big deal in politics for years to come. But before we move on to the next part of our conversation, I want to pause for a minute and see if anything's really sticking out to you so far as we're, going deeper into this world of AI and elections. What's grabbing your attention?
You know what really strikes me is just how fast AI is changing. Like, it's evolving at an incredible pace, and it's hard to keep up with all the new developments and what they mean. We go from talking about deepfakes to how AI can help people understand complicated policies. It's pretty amazing and a little overwhelming, to be honest.
I hear you. It feels like we're on the edge of a big technological and societal shift. It's exciting and, yeah, a little scary. But one thing's for sure, we can't just sit back and watch this happen. We have to be involved in shaping how AI is developed and used, especially when it comes to something as important as our democracy.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technology itself, it's about our values. We have to make sure AI is being used to help people, not manipulate or disenfranchise them. And that means we all need to be informed, engaged, and willing to speak up about the kind of future we want. Yet one thing that really stuck with me from that BPC report, the Bipartisan Policy Center, was their focus on preparing for those times when things are uncertain during an election. Like when there are technical glitches or delays in counting the votes, or even just human errors.
Right, those moments when everyone's glued to the news waiting for results and rumors are flying around everywhere. It seems like those are the times when people could really take advantage of this situation, especially with social media.
Yeah.
It just amplifies everything.
Exactly. It's like a breeding ground for bad actors who want to create chaos and make people lose trust in the process. And AI could give them a much bigger platform to spread their message. It could spread faster and reach way more people. So it's not just about preventing specific attacks. It's also about making the system more resilient to these broader attempts to disrupt things and erode people's confidence.
So it's like we're talking about information warfare,
Hmm.
where AI is used to manipulate what people believe, to create doubt, even if the election itself is running smoothly.
You got it. And the BPC report, it has some interesting suggestions for building that resilience. Like, one thing they say is that election officials should work with the courts ahead of time to educate judges about the potential challenges that AI could bring.
That's interesting.
So that way, if there are legal disputes or attempts to delay the certification of the election because of AI-generated misinformation, the courts can react quickly and decisively.
Makes sense. Having judges who understand this stuff is crucial in those high-pressure moments where every decision could really affect the outcome. It's all about thinking ahead, right?
Yeah.
Anticipating the problems and having those safeguards in place before they turn into major crises.
Exactly. Another important recommendation is for election officials to be really transparent with the public. If there are delays or technical problems, they need to communicate clearly and honestly about what's going on, what steps are being taken to fix the problem.
Transparency builds trust. Being upfront with voters,
Yeah.
letting them know that things might not always go perfectly, but showing them that there are systems in place to make sure the count is fair and accurate.
Exactly. The BPC also talks about pre-bunking.
Pre-bunking.
It's this idea of getting ahead of potential misinformation by educating the public about the election process and the potential challenges beforehand.
I like that. Pre-bunking. It's like giving people a heads up about the tactics that might be used against them, like you're inoculating them against the fake news.
Perfect analogy. The more people know about how elections work and what to look out for, the less likely they are to be fooled by that AI-generated misinformation. It's all about empowering people to think critically, question what they see online, and find those reliable sources of information.
You mentioned earlier that most voters will be using paper ballots in 2024. That seems like a good way to protect against manipulation, especially in this digital age.
It is. Having that physical record is really important, especially if there are any questions about the electronic counts. It allows for recounts and audits, which are crucial for making sure the results are right and that people have faith in the process.
But even with paper ballots, couldn't a really advanced AI system create fake ballots that could be slipped in? I mean, if AI can create those super realistic deepfakes, couldn't it also create fake ballots that are almost impossible to tell apart from the real ones?
You're right. That's a good point. And it highlights how important it is to have really strong chain of custody procedures throughout the entire election process. From the moment those ballots are printed to when they're counted, stored, and eventually destroyed, there has to be a clear and secure trail that can be checked and verified at every single step. Any weak points in that chain could create opportunities for manipulation, whether it's done by humans or AI systems.
So it's not just about the technology, it's also about the human processes, accountability, and making sure those physical ballots are secure every step of the way.
That's it. And something that keeps coming up in these conversations about AI and elections is the role of tech companies. They're the ones building these powerful tools, so they have a big responsibility to make sure those tools are used responsibly and ethically.
Right, they have so much power and influence, but it's not always clear what their role should be in regulating or mitigating the potential harms of AI. It's this constant tension between innovation and responsibility.
It's complicated for sure. Some people say tech companies should be more proactive in developing safeguards and working with governments to set clear ethical guidelines for how AI is developed and used, especially in sensitive areas like elections. But others worry that too much regulation could stifle innovation and give too much power to governments to control information.
It's a tough balance to find, encouraging innovation, but also protecting our democratic values. But I think it's clear that we need to have a serious and ongoing conversation about the impact AI is having on society. It's not just about technological advancements. It's about the kind of future we want to build, both individually and as a society.
I couldn't agree more. And everyone needs to be a part of this conversation. Technologists, ethicists, policymakers, and everyday people. We need to work together to shape the development of AI in a way that benefits everyone and strengthens our democratic principles, not weakens them.
Speaking of diverse voices, I'd love to hear more about how AI could help communities and candidates that don't have a lot of resources. You said earlier that it could potentially make things more fair in elections, giving those with fewer resources a fighting chance. How could that work?
Well, traditionally, political campaigns have been really expensive. Candidates with a lot of money have had a huge advantage when it comes to things like advertising, data analysis, and voter outreach. But AI could change that, making those tools more accessible and affordable.
Interesting. Can you give me some specific examples of how AI could level the playing field?
Sure. Imagine an AI-powered tool that can analyze demographic data and identify communities that are often overlooked by traditional campaigns.
Okay.
This tool could help candidates tailor their message and connect with voters who might otherwise be left out of the political process simply because they don't fit the typical mold of a likely voter.
That would be incredible. It could help those marginalized communities have their voices heard and make our democracy more representative of everyone.
Exactly. And for candidates with limited resources, AI could help them automate tasks like scheduling, fundraising, and social media.
Okay.
This could free up their time and energy to focus on the things that really matter, meeting with voters, building relationships, and developing policies that address the needs of their constituents.
So it's like AI could be their virtual campaign manager,
Yeah.
handling all the logistics so they can focus on connecting with people.
Exactly. It could democratize access to those essential campaign tools and resources. And that's not just good for the candidates, it's good for our democracy as a whole. When more people have the opportunity to participate in politics, our system becomes more representative and responsive to the needs of all citizens, not just the wealthy and powerful.
I'm starting to see the potential here. AI isn't just about robots and algorithms. It's about empowering people and creating a more just and equitable society, using technology to amplify the voices of those who've been ignored, and to create a political system that's more inclusive and representative of our diverse nation.
I think that's a powerful vision and something we should definitely strive for. We're at a crucial point where we have the chance to shape the future of AI and make sure it's used to advance our democratic ideals, not undermine them.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from potential disruptions to the exciting possibilities of AI in the 2024 election. It's clear that this technology is going to have a huge impact on how we campaign, vote, and govern ourselves.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about something that often gets overlooked in these discussions about AI and the future of democracy: the role of individual citizens. What do you think? Is there anything everyday people can do to prepare for this new AI-powered political landscape and make sure their voices are heard?
Absolutely. There are so many things individuals can do to be more informed and engaged citizens in this era of AI. It's not just about knowing about the technology, it's about developing critical thinking skills and media literacy to navigate this increasingly complex world of information.
So it's not just about understanding how AI works. It's about understanding how it can be used to manipulate us, to influence our opinions and decisions.
Exactly. We need to be more careful about the information we consume. We can't just passively scroll through social media and believe everything we see. We need to be asking questions, checking sources, and thinking critically about why we're seeing certain information. And this goes for all information, not just political stuff.
Right. We need to be skeptical, question what we're told, and look for different perspectives. It's like we have to become our own fact checkers, especially when it comes to information that's emotionally charged or politically sensitive.
That's right. And besides improving our own critical thinking skills, I think it's also important to talk to people who have different views than our own. It's easy to stay in our own little bubbles, surrounded by people who agree with us. But if we really want to understand AI and its impact on society, we need to listen to and learn from people who see things differently. It's through those tough conversations that we can start to understand each other better and come up with solutions that work for everyone.
I love that. It's not about silencing people who disagree with us. It's about creating a space where we can respectfully discuss our differences, challenge each other's ideas, and learn from one another. And that kind of open-mindedness is crucial if we want to use AI for good and make sure it strengthens our democracy, not weakens it.
I agree. We're all in this together. We're all trying to figure out this rapidly changing technological world. And the more we can come together as a society, as a global community to talk about these issues and find solutions, the better prepared we'll be for the future and create a world where AI benefits everyone.
Okay, I think that's a good place to take a break. We've explored a lot in this second part, from the potential for AI-driven chaos to the importance of building resilience and becoming more informed citizens. But we're not done yet. In the final part, we'll talk about specific steps that individuals can take to prepare for this AI-powered future and make sure their voices are heard. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into AI and the 2024 election. It's been, I don't know about you, but it's been eye-opening for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. A lot to take in. We've talked about the potential for AI to, spread misinformation and the need for strong cybersecurity and the importance of human oversight. But we also talked about some really cool possibilities, like how AI could be used to give voters more power, make things fairer for candidates, and create a more inclusive democracy.
Right, exactly. It's like we're at this point where AI could either divide us and be used to manipulate people, or it could be a force for good in our society. And it feels like the choices we make today, both as individuals and as a society, are really going to determine which way it goes.
Absolutely. It's not about being afraid of AI or thinking it's some kind of magic solution. It's about understanding what it can do
Hmm.
and making sure it's developed in a way that aligns with our values and the kind of world we want to live in.
So as we head into this election, what's the most important thing you want our listeners to remember? What's the one thing you really hope they'll keep in mind as they navigate this whole AI and politics thing?
I think the biggest thing is to be informed and engaged. Stay curious, ask questions, and don't just accept everything you hear or read. The more we all know about AI and how it can affect us, the better prepared we'll be to make sure it's used to support democracy, not the other way around.
I love that. Informed and engaged. It's so easy to get overwhelmed with all the information out there, but we can't just tune it all out. We got to be active in shaping the future we want.
Well said. And this isn't just about this one election. AI and politics, they're going to be intertwined for a long time. It's an ongoing thing. So we got to stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions about how we want to use this technology to shape our world.
Absolutely. Well, before we go, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about. With all this talk about AI and misinformation, what can you do to make sure you're getting accurate information about the election and the candidates? What sources do you trust? And how do you check the information you see before you share it with others? We all need to be asking ourselves those questions, not just during elections, but all the time.
I think that's a perfect question to end on. It really makes us think about where we get our information and how we can be responsible citizens in this age of information overload.
Exactly. It's about being careful about what we read and see online, looking for reliable sources, and realizing that we each have a part to play in fighting misinformation and protecting our democracy.
It's an exciting time and it's also a challenging one. And I think we can handle it if we're open-minded, willing to learn, and committed to working together.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI in elections. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.